Hi, I'm Amy, and this is A-Star Reads, and it's time for the Great British Bake Off book recommendations, week 4, dessert week. I'm so excited about this, and I've been having so much fun with this series because as the series goes along, the complexity of the challenges increases, and the complexity of the prompts increases for me. This week was hard. It was really hard, and this actually took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to. And bread week I thought was going to be challenging. But dessert week was rough, and I hope that these books work. I think they do. As I was going through them, just like with bread week, I was like, oh, yeah, that does work. Before I go over my book recommendations, I wanted to say that this idea is such a wonderful, fun way to recommend books, and it came from Ruby Red. And if you haven't checked out her channel, go watch her Great British Bake Off book recommendations. I loved her idea so much that I took it, ran with it, and created this season 12 version where I'm going through each episode, picking prompts based off certain elements of the show. And also, if you have not watched week 4, dessert week of Great British Bake Off, go watch it now. I don't want to spoil it for you because I will, and then come back and get my recommendations. So let's talk about desserts. Desserts are tricky because I think of anything sweet as being a dessert. A cookie is a dessert. Ice cream is a dessert. A popsicle is a dessert in my mind. But for the Great British Bake Off, desserts are looked at as those things you get at the end of a meal or at a celebration. You order a meal, you ask for a dessert, they come and bring you a very elaborate, decorative, unique kind of dessert, not just something you'd bake yourself. And then, of course, at a party, you're celebrating something big, you have a celebration cake of some sort. And that's what Great British Bake Off considers desserts on dessert week. I like this week a lot because the challenges usually require some level of finesse. It really does separate the contestants that are great at details and making things look really pretty compared to the contestants who need a little more work in that area. So I feel like this tends to be a week where you're starting to separate the people and you're starting to see, okay, this person needs to work on their craft a little more, and these are the ones that are possibly going to be the winners. So for the signature challenge, they decided to have the contestants make a pavlova. And I love pavlovas, and it's so strange because it's not something you get very often. So I'm going to explain a pavlova to you because I feel like this is a dessert that very few people actually, especially younger people, eat very often or know about. It's sort of created like a cake would be created. It's not a cake in my opinion, but it is layers of a cake-like material filled with a filling. And the layers are made with meringue, which is not like thinking of lemon meringue pie, although it is the same concept. I'm thinking more meringue cookies. If you think of those light cookies that are crisp and crumbly, although meringue is very simplistic in its ingredients, it's just basically egg whites and sugar. You have to whip it up, you have to make sure it's the right consistency, you pipe it out, then you put it in the oven and cook it, but not for too long because you don't want it to crack. And then you take it out and you put it in a very low heat and let it dry out completely. And if things aren't done correctly, meringues break very easily. And that's a problem that a lot of the contestants come up against. The filling is usually a custard of some sort, or like a curd, like a lemon curd or something. And that actually helps to take the sweetness down a little bit because pavlovas are made with sugar. So they basically could be overly sweet if you don't add the right filling to kind of break that sweetness out a little bit. And then at the end, you need to decorate it so it looks grand and gorgeous. And so the book that I chose to go with this prompt was Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. This was an interesting choice, but when I was trying to think of all the different elements of a pavlova, this book worked out perfectly. When you look at a pavlova, it's gorgeous, it's intricate. I think of pavlovas as being something you would find at a garden party or something that has to do with wealth. And so I thought Mrs. Dalloway worked wonderful. She's a woman who has a lot of wealth, and she spends most of her time preparing for these elaborate garden parties that she hosts for different people that come, and she's an entertainer. That's how she spends her life. She doesn't have anything else except a lot of money and the friends she invites to these parties. But when you think of pavlovas, you think of a very simplistic feature, which is few ingredients. There's not much that actually goes into a pavlova, but making it is so complex, and there's a lot of instances where it can break and go wrong. And I feel like this worked well for Mrs. Dalloway because even though she seems like she has her whole life together, everything seems perfect, you find out that she has a lot of inner turmoil, a lot of emotional situations that have affected who she is now and kind of the choices she made in life. And that's also true for a lot of the guests the friends that come to her garden party, they aren't these simple people. They have these levels of complexity that you start unraveling as the story goes on. I think that that works out beautifully for Pavlova because it looks beautiful, it looks perfect, it looks presentable, but it wasn't that easy creating that. Another element that works with the complexity of a Pavlova and the story Mrs. Dalloway is the stream of consciousness. This book is very hard for a lot of people to understand and enjoy because of the writing style. It's a beautiful writing style. It's so well done. But it took me 2 readings to really understand Mrs. Dalloway because when I was a teenager, I tried to read it and it did not go well. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really was able to appreciate the stream of consciousness writing. So in so many ways, I think we've got that beauty, simplicity that hides a complexity. And that works for both Pavlova and Mrs. Dalloway. All right, so now it's time for the technical challenge, which is a dessert that I absolutely love. And this was set by, I can't remember if it was set by Prue or by Paul, but it doesn't matter because it is a quintessential British dessert, and that is sticky toffee pudding. Love it. I've had it several times in the UK, and every single time it's amazing. I haven't had a bad one yet. And so when I picked a book for this, I went with a book that I felt was very British, and that's Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. So the reason I chose this book was for a few reasons. For one, the humor is very British, and a lot of times when I didn't understand the jokes, it was because it was referencing pop culture or different jokes and things that were specific to the British culture. And so obviously you can enjoy this book even if you're not from the UK, but I feel like there were some jokes that I didn't always get because I didn't know those references. These characters get themselves into a sticky predicament. Like, it's a really sticky predicament and you're not quite sure, I think going into it what's ultimately going to happen, but you don't know how they're going to get there. And the way they handle everything is very funny because it's like serious apocalyptic things going on and they're just kind of like, yeah, this is a bit of a bummer what we're having to deal with. The characters are very warm and charming, and that's kind of how I think of Sticky Toffee Pudding as well. And so that's why I thought Good Omens worked well for Sticky Toffee Pudding. It's time for the showstopper. So the showstopper was a celebratory Joconde emprunt cake, and that means imprinted basically in French. I mean, I know I'm not French, so it's probably pronouncing things wrong or what have you, but you create a design and you pour cake material over it. So you make a very, very thin sheet cake. When you pull it out of the pan, it has a design on it. It has imprint in it. And then you wrap it around a cake that you've created. So you've created a cake and you make this like collar is what they call it around the cake. And so what you see when you look at the cake is this gorgeous decoration around it. So that's the intention of an emprunt cake, and it's meant to be very decorative. Joconde is a type of cake. It's a low-fat, light and fluffy cake, and it's made with almonds. So that's what Joconde means. So celebratory, meaning celebrating. Joconde meaning this light, fluffy almond cake. Emprunt meaning it has the collar that has the imprint in it. Cake. And so that's what our contestants were supposed to make. It is always tricky because it is very hard to make that collar and not have it crack. It happens all the time and you're always like, no. And sometimes if they don't cool the cake enough or what have you, they run out of time, it just melts out and it's devastating. It's devastating, but it's always a good challenge. It's always a fun challenge. So for this particular prompt, I went with Persuasion by Jane Austen. And the reason I went for this is, for one, it's a short story, light. It's a romance. It's one of her lightest romances in a lot. I think it is. It's her most romancy of books. So light, like the type of cake. But I feel like the characters are a lot like that emprunt collar. They're putting forward this vision of themselves, but it's not real. On the inside, they're holding in these emotions about each other. Like that collar in the cake, there's something hidden on the inside, something beautiful, something gorgeous that's just waiting to come out. And I also think Persuasion works for celebratory because that climax in the book is one of the most amazing celebratory moments of a book that I have read. I love it so much. And to me, I cried and I laughed. It's just a short moment. And it just is so much. And that's why I love that book so much. So I think that Persuasion and this cake are a perfect match. Okay, so let's talk about the winning cake this week. And the winning cake was done by Chigs, who is my mom's favorite. She has a total crush on Chigs. They said in the show that it looks like Robert De Niro and Andy Garcia put together, and I can see that. So I think that Chigs is going to be one that's going to surprise us in the end. Like, my favorite is Giuseppe, and of course Jurgen is strong, but Chigs has got some tricks up his sleeves, and I think he's going to surprise us in the end. We'll see. We'll see. So he made a Black Forest en pomme dessert, and this is basically an en pomme cake that was Black Forest, like Black Forest cake. So for this, I chose The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. And I know that that book is based off Russian folklore, and Black Forest cake is a German dessert. But when I think of the Black Forest, I think of dark woods, especially in the wintertime, with a lot of like mist and tall evergreen trees that are close together. And I get kind of that same vibe as I got from The Bear and the Nightingale. The other aspect of this cake, the en pomme cake, is that it has a collar. So in this story, Vasya, who's the young girl who we're following, she can see all these house sprites. And well, they're not just house sprites. They're these creatures that basically help out in domestic life. They make sure the fire continues going. They take care of the different animals. They are useful for the domestic life of all these people in this community, but the people can't see them. The only person that can see them is Vasya, and then as we find out later, her stepmother. You've got this normal world, which is the collar, that's hiding the secret world, which is the cake on the inside. So I think it works. Also, if we think about the decorative elements that make up the en pomme cakes, The Bear Nightingale has very whimsical, beautiful writing. And so I think this book works for the wonderful masterpiece that Chigs created. And if you have not read The Bear and the Nightingale, I did enjoy it. It took me a while to get into it, but I enjoyed it a lot, especially towards the end. It got really, really good. And I am looking forward to going on in the series. So then finally, the hardest part, because we're talking about the losing dessert, and that went this week to Maggie. Maggie created a strawberry en pomme dessert. Part of the problem for Maggie was that she was not willing to go out of her comfort zone when it came to desserts. The judges don't want that. They want you to be creative. They want you to take risks. And unfortunately, the execution just wasn't there. To match this dessert, I decided to go with the Secret Garden. And this may be the most obvious of my choices today, but I couldn't pick a better choice. Strawberries come from gardens, and they're classic, just like this classic novel. The collar is hiding the cake on the inside. Well, there was a giant fence in this book surrounding the secret garden. And it's a sweet story. It's a beautiful, sweet, sweet story, just like Maggie's strawberry en pomme cake. Those are my choices. I hope you enjoyed them. If there were any other choices you would have made, let me know in the comment section down below, because this one was hard. It was hard because I didn't know how to work with the en pomme element. I was like, what the heck do I do with this? But I think it turned out well. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what choices I make for week 5. Week 5 is German week. That's exciting, I think. I don't remember what the prompts are. Well, hopefully it turns out well, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Bye-bye.